Welcome back to News Channel 20 Sunrise. We're joined now in the studio by Senator Andy Manar and Senator Dale Rauner. Gentlemen, appreciate you coming in and joining us. We'll talk a little bit about the governor's State of the State address yesterday. We'll start with you, Senator Rauner. Senate President John Cullerton yesterday called this a divisive speech and campaign rhetoric. How did it sound to you hearing a Republican for the first time in about 12 years address the General Assembly?
Well, it was great to hear a Republican address the General Assembly. We haven't had that in a long time. But, you know, from day one of his campaign, Governor Rauner portrayed himself as an agent of change and someone who, if he was elected governor, was going to come to Springfield and was going to shake things up and change the way of doing business that we've seen in the last dozen years. And I think yesterday all you heard was the governor lay out a set of proposals that did just that. Say, you know, these are reforms, comprehensive reforms to improve our schools, get the economy going again, and provide taxpayers some relief. So really, it was just, to me, it was the governor following through on what he talked about in the campaign.
Senator Manar, you worked closely with President Cullerton on his staff years ago, and now you work next to him in the Senate. What was your take? Do you agree or disagree?
I would tend to agree with the Senate President. You know, I left the House chamber yesterday with a very different feeling than when I walked in. I thought, to the governor's credit, when he came into office between the election and the swearing in, he did a pretty good job of reaching out to legislators on both sides of the aisle to begin a positive discussion. But yesterday, I think, was an aggressive speech. I think he laid out many things, for example, that just aren't going to pass the General Assembly, simply because there would be so much opposition and there would be so much division associated with them. So there weren't too many specifics. So I think we'll see those specifics in legislation once they're filed, and they're going to get a fair hearing in the Senate, and ultimately we'll start taking some votes.
With a Democratic majority in both sides of the General Assembly still, we have a question here from one of our viewers on Facebook. With the Democratic majority, one of those things that may not be able to pass is the right-to-work zones, or as Governor Rauner called them, employee empowerment zones. Where do you stand on right-to-work laws? This is a question from Nick. And what effect would they have on the working class in Illinois?
Yeah, I'm opposed. This is just a non-starter with me. I don't think attacking middle-class union households in Illinois are going to grow the economy. I don't think that's the approach we need. There's so many things we can do. The one thing he did mention was, let's look at the tax code. We should do that. I think that conversation is much more valuable to our process moving forward than putting forward a proposal that, quite frankly, I don't even know how it would work. If you attach that to municipal authority, you know, some businesses would be included, some wouldn't. We'd have a patchwork of laws in the state. But I think, you know, all in all, attacking union households is not going to get us to a better place in the state.
Senator Rauner, one of the things that Governor Rauner promised to do was talk about raising the minimum wage. Yesterday, he laid out a plan. However, Jen and I talked about it in the studio as it was happening. It seemed like the speech almost ground to a halt based on reaction from many Democrats. Is raising the minimum wage to $10 an hour over the next 7 years, 25 cents a year, enough for people living on the minimum wage right now?
Well, I think what Governor Rauner is trying to do is strike a balance between increasing the minimum wage and also enacting reforms like workers' compensation reform, unemployment insurance reforms, other things to kind of release the private sector, much different than what we've seen in previous years, and allow that minimum wage increase to increase as economic commerce and job growth increases as well. It's a balanced approach. Again, what the governor talked about during the campaign, what the governors continued to talk about before he was sworn in during the transition, was a comprehensive approach, not tweaking a little here and nudging a little bit over here, but a comprehensive approach to get us out of the economic and fiscal woes that the state has suffered from for years.
Senator Manar, the governor talked about his agenda. There's going to be some things you like, some things you don't. I think we all agree, and many lawmakers agree, that job growth, education funding, all themes that we can agree on. But what were some of the policies that you heard yesterday afternoon that you agree with?
I mentioned the tax code. I think we should have that conversation. It's a difficult one to have, so I compliment the governor for bringing it up in his speech and highlighting it. You know, clearly his call for increased funding to public education is a step forward. Got to make sure we spend it the right way. But that echoes the calls of the State Board of Education and our coalition that is formed to reform the funding formula itself. So I think that's a step in the right direction. So, you know, I don't expect to agree with the governor on every issue. You know, there's plenty of issues where Democrats disagree with each other. But we have to have a positive step forward. You know, aggressive, divisive approaches, I don't think are going to solve the problems we face in the state. But there are some things that I think we can begin to work on.
Before we go, real quick, you talked about a lack of specifics. We'll start with you, Senator Menard, and end with Senator Rauner. What would you like to hear in 2 weeks at the budget address?
Well, you know, the budget address, I think, is the major step forward. You know, the state of the state, maybe to a lesser extent. So 2 weeks from yesterday, I think, is a major moment for Governor Rauner. We have any number of problems to solve with the state budget. That's going to require Republicans and Democrats working together. There's shared responsibility that was given by voters, and I think that's going to be a critical moment in 2 weeks.
Senator Rauner, what would you like to hear in 2 weeks at the budget address?
A reality check. The state government has had a chronic problem of spending more than the taxpayers could afford to send to Springfield. And so what I hope to hear from the governor is him laying out the reality of where we are fiscally and what it's going to take to right this ship.
Appreciate both you being here on short notice, and enjoy your time, and hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.